Hello, professionals. My name is Rico Aladdin, and I'm the founder of Professional Lunch. Today, we have the president of State here in the studio for a very special professional lunch. Dr. Brimhall, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's a pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Please tell us who you are and what you do.
Yes, well, I'm the proud president of Minnesota State Community and Technical College, and that's what I do. I have an opportunity to work with all four of our campuses in four different communities: Fergus Falls, Detroit Lakes, Moorhead, and Wadena. And my journey started a long time ago, but I'll just say in this question that I'm an M-State graduate as well.
Wow.
So I went to the very institution that I have the opportunity to lead, and it makes me really proud of the work that we do.
Wonderful. Yes, I always find myself repeating the reason why I'm having this show is to give college students, early career professionals, a window into successful professionals out there. So tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get started wherein you get here today in that position?
Yeah, I grew up in a low-income family, so we just worked really hard, and college wasn't even really talked about. So I was the first person in my family to go to college.
Wow.
And so I really walked around the halls. I tell students all the time, I walked around the halls pretending like I knew what was going on and thinking everybody else knew a lot more than I did about college. So I felt like an imposter in college. And I remember one day when an instructor asked me to come after class, and I thought I was in trouble. And I was a rule follower, so I didn't want to be in trouble. And I said, and he said, I see something in you that's really special, and I think you can do really great things with your life. And I think you can do whatever you want to do. And it was really the first time that someone had taken that level of interest in me and really just kind of propelled me into thinking about what's possible. So I started at M-State as a community college student, and then now have a PhD. And I don't think anyone in my family or in my background would have thought that was possible. So I always try to share that because I think it's important for students to know that we all have different backgrounds, and the power of education is that anyone can break through some of those barriers and become anything they want to be.
Yes, wonderful. You can imagine that there are other students that are in the same situation that you were in, probably first generation college students. So what would you tell them on how did you decide either to choose your major or what inside you to take that step?
Well, that's an interesting story too, because the first almost 2 years I was at M-State, I was a criminal justice major.
Oh, okay.
And I was going to be a police officer. And anyone who knows me now thinks, what in the world? Where did that even come from? But I really was interested. And I remember a day in class when we watched a video, and it was a kind of a hostage or situation where weapons were involved. And I thought to myself, well, I can never do that. And that day, then I started exploring and trying to figure out what in the world I was going to do.
Yeah.
I didn't really know, so I went into communications. It's kind of like a business major. I think you know the area you want to be in. But the thread that I see now with my job and being a cop, and why I tell people it does make sense, is because I wanted to help people then, just like I want to help people now.
Yeah.
So I don't think you can rush the process. I think you have to be open to meeting people and learning from them and asking good questions. And I also don't think you have to pretend like you know what's going on. I think students can ask and tell people and be vulnerable and say, I really feel like I'm lost in this situation. I don't have anybody to guide me. There's so many faculty and staff that would help mentor students, and professionals like myself that would help mentor students. And I always say it's my job to believe in our students before they believe in themselves.
Yes.
And so I think it's just important for folks to know that, or students to know that there are people, so many people that really are rooting for them.
Yes, wonderful. So, and that's the reason why we have professional lunch, right? We sit down with professionals who are doing very well in their professions, and so that student out there who probably about to graduate but don't know what they're gonna be doing. So I want to ask you to describe how, I know you work at State for a long time now, and how did you start? Did somebody give you an internship, or how did you get started?
Yeah, I did an internship, unpaid internship, which our students can't really believe anymore. I worked 40 hours a week for 6 months, unpaid,
Wow.
in the public relations and advertising department. And I just started getting to know students. And I then got asked to be a dance coach with zero dancing background, but it paid $500. And I thought, well, at least I can pay a bill with my internship. And so and then I asked student government, and really it goes on from there. But yeah, internships are a really powerful way to get into an organization. And what I tell students all the time, and I think is important for young professionals to know, is Your first day on a job could be the day you're interviewing to be a president of that company. You know, for me, if I would have not taken seriously my internship or the kind of entry level jobs that I had, it wouldn't have laid the groundwork for me to have the job that I have today. Wow. So, you know, you're in an internship or you're in your current job, or maybe it's not the job you want eventually, it's still an interview for another job.
Yes.
So, you know, just that it's kind of the pressure, it's also the opportunity to be seen for not only the job you're in now, but the job you could be in the future. And I just think about how if I would have not taken, you know, if I wouldn't have been as open to meeting people and learning from people in those early years, I never would have had the opportunity that I have now.
Wow, wonderful. So after you are done with State, you just start there with the internship and then you continue working for them.
Yeah,
So
and I never left.
Yeah, how long have you been with them? If you don't mind
almost
me
25 years.
Wow.
Or maybe it's over 25 years. And so, yeah, and again, I never really sought out to be a president. I never even sought out to be a leader necessarily, but I cared so much about our students. And every time an opportunity came up, I would think to myself, could I impact more students if I took that role? And the answer is yes. Every time it was yes if I become a director and then a dean and a vice president and an associate vice president, I could impact more students each time. And so I said yes. I dug my heels in and learned a whole new job in a lot of cases, and again, it got me where I am today.
Yes, wonderful. So now you're the president of State. So describe your role as the president.
Yeah, well, I do a lot of driving. Okay. Since we have 4 campuses and 2 of them are 90 miles apart. And I think my primary role is I have 2. I think one is to tell the story of our institution and our students.
Yes.
And the other is to remove barriers for students. You know, although I've had a tremendous amount of success and gotten several degrees, I always tell students I can take myself back to how I felt those days when I felt like an imposter today. I can remember it like it was yesterday because I remember the feeling of not feeling like I belonged.
Yes.
And I don't want our students to experience that. And so I keep asking questions, hard questions about our policies and our procedures. And our students have incredible life stories. And I just want to honor those by removing barriers for them to be successful.
Yes, wonderful, wonderful. So describe for me the first day on the job, how it was. Was it the same? Because you worked with the school for a long time.
Yeah.
But the first day as president of State, how was it?
I looked across the desk and thought, what have I done? And I try to be honest about that because everybody said that everything will look different from the other side of the desk.
Yeah.
And that was true. And as an internal candidate, you don't have a honeymoon period. Everyone expects you to know that job on day one. And so I gave myself a lot of grace because I knew I needed to look at the institution differently to make a different level of decisions. And when I was the vice president, I was very close to the president. And so I thought I knew about 90% of what she was working through because she was very open and sharing and wanted me to be able to grow in my job. And now when I've become the president, I realize I knew about 50% or less. Yeah. So there's just so many dynamics and nuances in leadership and being the CEO that I don't take for granted. I see as an opportunity, but there's so much time that has to be spent thinking. Yeah. That's different than any other role because the decisions you make impact, in our case, 15,000 students. Wow. And nearly 500 employees. I don't ever take that for granted. I know how much I need to think through the decisions that we make as an institution because it's our students, their families, next generation based on who they motivate if they make a degree. I mean, it really is generational impact, and I take a lot of honor in that.
Wow, wonderful. So describe to me your leadership style, because you just mentioned, you talk about leadership. That was going to be my next point. Describe your leadership style for me.
Ooh, that's always a tough question because I think I'm real. I think I spend a lot of time being very honest with people about the good in the role and in my at the institution and those things that we need to continue to solve and work on. As an institution, I care deeply about people and about their success, and so I think I always lead with my heart, and I never want to be front and center. I understand it's part of my job, and that's why I'm the face of the college in some cases. But I would always put our students front and center.
Wow, wonderful. So as a president, I assume that you recruit people. So how do you recruit, a staff member or a professor?
Yeah, well, first we look for, who believes in our students the way that we do. We look at that sort of deep, ingrained, student-centered leadership. And then people who don't have a lot of ego in their work, because ego really doesn't have a place. It doesn't matter how I found out the information or what my role in it was. What matters is what's best for our students and our communities. So we look for selfless leaders and those that are student-driven. And then we look all over the country for the best people, and we bring them to this area. Our most recent hires were from Chicago and Detroit, leaders who have diverse life experiences that can challenge me in different ways and can challenge our leadership team to be thinking through things that we need in the future and not just what we've done in the past.
Wow, wonderful. We're going to take a short break here. When we come back, we're going to talk to President Brimhall about some of the things that she loves about what she does. We'll be right back. We are back. We are at the Bison Information Network studio today, and my guest is President Carrie Brimhall, State President Carrie Brimhall. Welcome back.
Thank you.
So now we get to the part of the conversation where we're going to talk about some of the things that you love about your career. So I usually ask for 3 things, but you can tell me more because we have time.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And there's so many things that I love about my job. First is the challenge of it all, and right now in the environment that we're in our regions, and how many students are needed to fill all the jobs that are available. I say that sometimes we used to be called the best kept secret, and I kind of want to go back to that sometimes, and I tease about that because it's so busy, and everything is so much more complex, and our industry partners and our communities need more from us than they've ever needed. So I love the challenge of that, and I'm a problem solver, so I like to be able to sit down with people and talk to them and get to know them and then come up with creative solutions for their needs. So I love that. I love students. Of course, I've said that so much, but that's really what drives me to do my work. And I especially love when they reach out to me and ask me to help them navigate something. So I provide my cell phone number to students, which not a lot of presidents probably do. But I found that they're so respectful of when they reach out, and it really is in an emergency situation, or like last week to say Happy New Year. I learned, and last year on Christmas Eve or day, a former student from a couple years ago was FaceTiming me, and I thought, oh my gosh, what does he need? And the answer was nothing. He just wanted to say how much he enjoyed his time at the college and wanted to wish myself and my family happy holidays. So I love students too, and I love hearing from them, especially when they can be real with me and they trust me enough to share part of their life journey. And then our team is phenomenal, and they really do great work. And my best day is when I don't know something and I'm out in the community and somebody says, oh my gosh, you're doing great work here and there and the other place. And I go, wow, I didn't even know that. So we have a really talented team of people who help us achieve our mission, and it's fun to support them and cheer them on.
Wonderful. I'm so glad you mentioned challenges, because this is the third part of our conversation. When I talk to professionals, one thing I tell them all the time is, I want to know how you started, what you love, and the challenges. Because I believe if you can, present that to anybody out there, they can have a really nice window into what you're doing. What they would like about it, and what they won't like about it, and the challenges. Of course, all the profession have challenges. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So I would like to know, what is the most satisfying part of your job?
Graduation, hands down. It really is, because it's the culmination of all of the things that we try to do to get students to the finish line, and all of the barriers that they overcome and challenges that they overcome to sit there. So when we have graduation, we have a lot of familial support, and some students bring 15 people to graduation. We don't have a limit. Balloons and flowers and hoots and hollers, and it really just reminds you of the generational impact of our work, and how when a little brother is standing there and he's watching his brother graduate and be the first person in college, we know that impacts the little brother too, and to be a part of that. So graduation's the best part. It's the most satisfying. It's what we wait for every year. And I said this year, I think I've been to It's probably close to 75 graduations because we have 5 a year
Wow.
with each of our campuses. So I don't even know how many, but I'll just say it's never gotten old. It feels so monumental to put on my cap and gown and stand in front of the stage.
Wonderful. So the most satisfying, that's graduation. What is the least satisfying part of your job?
I would say it's the kind of the drama that everybody works through in a workplace. I think people are tired. The pandemic fundamentally changed everybody. And then the divisiveness in our country, it certainly comes over into a workplace as well.
Yes.
So I think people are tired, and I give them a tremendous amount of grace, but they don't always, it doesn't always go to belief in people first. It sometimes goes to criticism first, and I think that's the part that is hard for me, because while that's all very important to get out on the table, it also takes away from time to work for students and work for our communities.
Yeah. So I wanna know. Besides, I know being the president of state, that's a big accomplishment in your career. So what are some of the other big accomplishments that you have in your career?
Yeah, that's it, right? No, becoming the president. But I think along the way, I celebrated a lot of accomplishments. Everything from our institution's accreditation to individual student successes. There's so many things that I celebrate. I try to live with gratitude, and I try to live in the moment of today, and not aspire to anything more. I never really set out to be a college president, and then when I got here, everybody said, well, what's next? And I said, why can't I just do this? Why does there have to be a next? Why can't I live in the moment of this job until and if that changes? And so I really try to live in the present. So my accomplishments are in relationships I've made with people.
Wow, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I interviewed President Blackhurst, and that interview is coming up next week. And she said the same thing along the line that she never expected to be president when she first started, and now she's enjoyed the role. It's quite interesting that you mentioned almost the same thing that she says.
And we're good friends,
yeah.
so it's and colleagues in our same system, and I think that sometimes people who seek to be leaders, there's value in that too. But it's those of us who kind of fell into the role because of our passion and for our work that sometimes take a little bit of a different approach. So I've certainly gotten awards along the way and those things. And that is all nice. It's not why I do my job. I do my job for the students. And so I think, remaining centered on that is probably one of my biggest accomplishments too. I've never lost sight of that.
Wow, that's wonderful. Do you have a hobby?
I have lots of hobbies. Actually, I have lots of hobbies. I run, and I like to be outside as much as possible, so I run year-round outside.
Oh, wow.
I bike in the summer. I do a lot of active things. I always say it's a kind of a mental health strategy to get things out of my brain. And so running or doing any kind of physical activity does that for me. So I do yoga. I travel and hike with friends. I have a girlfriend group that travels quite a bit, as much as we're able to. And so I do a lot outside of work. I manage.
Wonderful, wonderful. We're going to take another break here. When we come back, we will talk about some of the challenges that President Brimhall faced in her line of work. We'll be right back. We are back. We are at the Bison Information Network studio at NDSU. My guest today is President Carrie Brimhall. Carrie, welcome back. Now, I always say this segment is my favorite segment. It's the segment we're going to talk about the challenges. So tell me some of the biggest challenges you face as the president of M-State.
Well, I think the first challenge I'd talk about is balance. There is a sacrifice in leadership, a tremendous sacrifice away from people and your family and the people that you love. And so the challenge that I have is just maintaining that balance and making sure that I'm available. I still have children at home, or one child at home. I have two that are, one in college and one that's grown, and just making sure that I'm present for them too. Because the challenges that we face are large and complex and life impacting, I spend a lot of time thinking, and that doesn't always mean that I'm not supposed to be doing something else at that time. And so I really try to be present with people, and that means my family has to come in that mix too. And I need to shut down my college brain for a period of time. So I think the biggest challenge is just balance. And as a working professional trying to find ways to care about others as well. And then the other challenge is that there just aren't enough people, including our students, to fill the jobs of this region and the both states that we serve. And so it's really just trying to figure out creative and new ways to deliver education and to make sure that people who haven't traditionally been able to access education can, and they can get the training and skills that they need to move them from whatever life place they're in to owning a home and to providing for their family and to really changing the generational wealth of their family. And so it's just that constant, how do you take a system that's been around for decades and centuries and adjust it to what we need today. That's probably the other challenge we face.
Wow, wonderful. I'm glad you mentioned that because professional lunch is one of the things we're trying to work with city officials, business people, so that to see how we can keep students that who are graduating in the community. So, matter of fact, we have a panel discussion coming up here at the end of January, where we'll meet with some business owners and we'll meet with even students from different colleges to see what are they looking for after college, right? When they are done with college, so that they can stay in the community and fill those positions that are, that are empty, that the business people would like to fill. I'm so glad you mentioned that. So, one thing when you took over as president, it was 2018, yes? And I think right after that, COVID hit. And then I know I had to talk about this because that really tests leadership when you are doing this big time. Describe how did you deal with that change, because everything just changed when COVID happened.
Yeah, it was a blur, really, quite honestly. We were working such long days, and then I had, at the time, a 5th grader at home. And so she was trying to learn how to online learn, and it wasn't her thing.
Yeah.
So, and as I'm trying to run a college, she's, I can't get this thing to work in my computer. And so, like so many folks, we were just real about that. I mean, we could see cats walking across, we could see kids coming and crying, we did business, and M State was well positioned because we've done online learning for over 20 years.
Wow.
And so our folks, we weren't all ready to do that. So I think of things like HVAC or heating, ventilating, air conditioning. How do you teach that online when we've been an in-person operation, or healthcare, dental, nursing? Those were more challenging. But our folks dug in and they figured it out. And so, 85% of the college was probably ready to roll. And it took a little bit of transition. But those last group of people, they did everything they could to make sure that we could deliver education and get to the end of the semester. It was incredible. Like so many people, about 18 months later, we were all tired of being incredible and we were all tired of adjusting. And so then, people's energies level went down. But in that first initial shutdown, when we were all worried about the health and safety of everyone in our communities, we had examples of a gentleman who works in our automotive department put a GoPro on his head and he took apart his wife's car, and that car was working, and he took it apart and then put it back together. So we don't know how his wife felt about that, but that's the type of things our folks were doing to make sure students got what they needed.
Wow.
So it was a blur. It was we had enough inertia and momentum and passion to keep going, but it was a really tough time for everybody.
So dealing with COVID, with the change that happened during COVID, and dealing with different situations, dealing with difficult people. I don't know if that's something that you have to face with. Describe to me how you deal with those situations, like difficult situations.
Yeah, it really starts with listening for me, and really understanding that probably what's being presented to me is about 1/10 of what's actually going on in the person's life. And so I really just think about, and I remind my kids about this all the time, whatever's showing up is just a symptom of whatever else is going on. And so I really try to think about emotion and think about their background and think about their life experiences and what might be bringing them to a place of being difficult. And then I listen and do everything I can to empathize with where they're at. So that starts it for me. At the end of the day, I have to make decisions people don't like, and COVID taught me how to do that without taking it personal, because every decision we made in COVID, about 50% of people didn't like it.
Okay.
And so I got really good at not at half of the people not liking that. And it helps me now as things get even more complex to stay focused on our mission, our values, our vision, and not be worried about what people think.
Yeah.
I care about what people think, but I can't. Right now, there isn't any leader that's making decisions that everybody's clapping and cheering about. There's always going to be somebody that isn't happy, and it's just keeping driven toward what matters for students in our communities. And so yeah, I try to navigate with empathy and with good listening skills, and then just reminding myself it's not about me. It never has been and won't be, and really trying to be just understanding where the person's at.
Well, have you ever, taken a decision where some people, maybe a professor or some of your staff didn't agree with it, and how did you manage the conversation, Because if they disagree and the way they come about it, how did you go about that?
Well, I think it starts with doing a lot of listening before you make a decision. And so typically when I've made a decision and people don't agree, I already know that before I make the decision. I still have to make it because it's my job, but I already know what their concerns are. So I don't get a lot of feedback after a decision, because I've typically set up ways for people to give input before a decision is made. That's not always the case, but I would say most of the time that's my preference. So I do presidential listening sessions with our staff. I do student listening sessions. I meet with all 4 of our student governments twice a year and hear what students have to say. So all of that comes into my decision making. So I typically know if people aren't happy. But at the end of the day, everyone's very respectful that I have a job to do, and they might not have all the information I have in making that decision. And so they say what they need to say. I listen to their criticism and feedback. I try not to take it personal. And then we move on, and we serve students and teach students the next day, just like we did the day before.
Wow, wonderful. So have you ever had to make drastic cuts, budget? So how did you go about that?
Yeah, fortunately, we have a lot of really cautious spenders at M-State.
Oh, that's
so,
good. That's
so
good.
if we tell our employees that times are tight, they do a really great job of managing their own budgets and not overspending. Everybody works harder than they should. We're in that position. So we do have to make cuts every year, and it's the worst part of the job. It's especially when it impacts people and their families. And so we really try to listen, make those very carefully, and be as humane as possible in communicating that decision to the people that it impacts, understanding that our employees give their lives to M-State, and they've made a lot of sacrifices for us, and we have to honor that in whatever decisions we make. So we're not facing drastic cuts right now, and the state of Minnesota is doing well financially, so I'm hoping we won't in the near future. But I empathize with people who are, because I know that our colleagues around the nation are making some of those hard decisions, and it's hard to be a leader knowing that you're impacting lives in that way. At the same time, we have a job to do, and that at the end of the day, we have to make those decisions to bring our budget in balance.
Wow, wonderful. So what do you call success at M-State? What is success? What does success look like to you?
Yeah, well, me personally, I think it's all the things that I've already mentioned. It's finding that balance, being a good mom and a good friend, and also a great leader, and finding that balance and understanding I'm a whole person. So that's success for me personally, is just measuring those relationships that connection matters to me, and relationships and people matter. So that personally, as a college, it's listening to our communities and doing what they need. So I've explained before, community and technical colleges were designed to look at the region's needs, have programming to match those needs, and when the region's needs change, so do our programs. And so we're kind of always changing and doing really cool and exciting things. And so it's that people look at us and they say that's a college that responds. It's a college who understands students and their needs, and a college who understands they're part of the fabric of the community. And so ultimately it's achieving our mission, and our vision is a success story for every student, which is bold because it means 100%. But it's understanding that student's vision at that moment might not be graduation. It might just be getting a class done. It might be withdrawing and taking care of their family. And it's just really making sure that we're in tune with every student matters to us, and they're never a number, no matter how many of them we have.
Oh, wonderful. So there's, you mentioned empathy and gratitude. There is another term that we talk on the show. We mentioned kindness. When I say kindness, what does that mean to you?
Well, it's everything from paying for the coffee behind me and to being present with people.
Yes.
So I think a kind heart is how I show up in my work, and understanding that sometimes it doesn't appear that way to people, because a leader has a responsibility that has to also come first. But it's respecting and honoring every person at the college, student or employee, and in our communities. I've always found value in work. One of my first jobs was picking pickles, and and my darn brothers thought that we should share a bin, but I knew I was working harder than them, so I didn't. It was picking pickles to get school clothes and money for school clothes, and I took value in that work, and I still see value in that work. So kindness it's a way of life. I am someone who is driven by my faith as well, and so it really is showing up as a real person, being authentic with people, and caring enough about them to do the right thing.
Well, we usually have a student segment where I go on campus and ask students to answer a question, to what question they would have for the professionals who are coming onto the show. So today, because school has not started yet, I don't have that. But what are some of the things that you think students can do now to be successful in their whatever they choose to do in their career?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say to students is to understand your why. People say find a job you love and you never work a day in your life. That's not necessarily true. Work, even when you enjoy it, is still a sacrifice away from other things. And so I think it's really being certain about who you are and what sacrifices you're willing to make in life, and not apologizing for that, and not certainly being realistic, but not apologizing for what you want. And we don't do a lot, in my opinion. We kind of grind through a lot of stuff and not really think through the emotions of things. And we don't do a lot of self-exploration and what's our why, what's driving us to be a college president or a podcast host. I mean, there is a why behind that. And I think digging deeper and continuing to ask, but why that? And why that? And why do I feel that way? That really, for me, is the best thing you can do for yourself, is just really honor yourself enough to know why you're driven to do what you do.
Wow. President Carrie Brimhall, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's such a pleasure to have you sharing your experience with us. I know you have such a vast experience. It cannot be in just one podcast. I have to leave the door open for some other time for you to come on back to the show and share with me and share with the professional lunch sergeants about the school, about M-State and everything that you are doing in the community to help other professionals. So any last word that you want to share with some students who are watching on campus or the professional lunch sergeants?
Yeah, I would just say reach out. If you have questions about anything I've shared, or you just want to connect, or you need a nudge, you need some encouragement, you need someone to believe in you, reach out. People always say, well, I never reached out because I think you're so busy. That's true, but I'm driven by mentorship and support of other people and caring for other people, so I will drop everything for somebody who needs some advice, some encouragement, some guidance. So please don't hesitate. If there's something you feel like I can do to help you achieve your goals, I would just say please reach out.
Wow, wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Now, professional lunch this is what professional lunch is about. It's about bringing guests, accomplished professionals, to share their experience so that you, early career professionals, college students, can learn something from their career so that you can make better career decisions in your own journey. So, now, this is the part that I tell you. It's up to you to make today a great day. So have a great day.